This episode of Manage Smarter is brought to you by SalesFuel Sales Manager Training. Based on the Sales Manager's Guide to Greatness, it's a 36-lesson on-demand program to upskill your sales manager so they can execute your vision and drive consistent revenue growth. Watch a free lesson and find out more at salesfuel.com/SMT. Welcome to the Manage Smarter podcast with hosts C. Lee Smith and Audrey Strong. We're glad you're here for discussions on new ways to manage smarter, hire, develop and retain talent, improve results, and propel team performance to new heights. This is the Manage Smarter podcast.
You know, Lee, our guest today is an expert in soft skills, and I love some of the things that he has to say about that. Leadership isn't a title. Communication is not just talking. You have to think about these things with a totally different lens.
And as Tom Peters says, soft skills are hard, and I'm guessing Dennis Doran will tell us that it's hard as steel.
That's right. Welcome to Manage Smarter, everyone. I'm Audrey Strong, Vice President of Communications here at SalesFuel.
And I'm C. Lee Smith, the President and CEO of SalesFuel.
So it is Dennis Doran. Dennis, hello, good morning. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, folks. It's really good to be with you.
So you need to know Dennis, everyone. He is a leading expert in the construction industry with more than 30 years of experience and the author of the highly praised book, Soft as Steel. I love that title, which, as you might imagine, focuses on the vital importance of developing and valuing soft skills. Dennis has dedicated himself to proving business leaders in all industries, or providing them actually with the tools to be successful, not just in business. This applies to life and relationships as well, yeah. And he delivers an also inspirational message. And he is a funny guy. We were talking before we got in the room here. Great energy, and I think we're in for a real treat. So Dennis, welcome.
Thank you so much. And I'll try to be funny, but I'll also try to be sensible and answer questions appropriately as well.
Oh, well, that's a shame. Well, anyway. No, Dennis, is like I'm really curious about your experience in the construction industry, and of course, we're definitely going to talk about a lot about soft skills today. But I want to get your take on that. I had been hearing, that the construction industry right now is going just fine as they complete existing projects, but that may not necessarily be the case for 21, 22. How has COVID-19 affected the construction industry?
Well, I think you said it fairly accurately. As far as its impact, there was the initial shockwave that everybody had at the beginning of COVID back in March. So things came to a halt temporarily. Some job sites were shut down, but many job sites were later deemed to be essential. So activity began again, and the contractors, the subcontractors, the building trades unions, all the different stakeholders, they were running as fast and as hard as they could to figure out how they dealt first with all of the requirements associated with COVID. And it took a while for them to do that, but they did it, and they were able to get jobs up and running again. Jobs that had been temporarily halted got back into operation. So that was really so it was a kind of a shock wave, a lot of big waves, but a lot of activity has resumed. And again, it's market dependent. Some markets were more active before COVID, others were less, and so those trends stayed in place. It's interesting that we're having this conversation today. Yesterday I was on a call with an association executive in the Upper Midwest, and one of the questions that he asked me was, what do you think 2021, 2022 is going to look like as far as construction? And there's a very big question mark there, particularly in the sectors that involve commercial construction, multifamily housing, which is a residential sector, and even industrial. In the commercial sector, as we work through all of the impacts of COVID on the workplace, where you work, how you work, et cetera, projects that were on the books for 2021, 2022 starts. Some of them are being put back on the shelf. Planning has paused, and they're going to reconsider how they move forward with those after they see the full effect of what I'll call it, the reinventing of the workplace that's happening right now in every industry, and calling into question, how much space do we need? Where do we need the space? What kind of space do we need? Those kinds of things. So a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And the folks that are the economists, the market sector watchers, they're trying to figure it out. So they're constantly talking to owners and developers with regards to the commercial projects. They're talking to what we call serial builders, the major corporations in all sectors, about plant projects and refinery projects and all kinds of things. So just a lot of uncertainty, and the uncertainty uncertainty is not going to get cleared up really for 6 months to a year.
You know, the construction industry is not exactly known for having workers that are the best mannered, to put it that way. It's like, where do you start in teaching soft skills to people in the construction industry?
I start by using a cascade of profanity.
Yeah.
And that's the attention getter.
Just to make them feel right at home.
Just to make them feel, yeah, no. Actually, you know, I can say with a tremendous amount of both experience and a wide exposure to folks at the, you know, from the ground level up in the construction industry, that there are a lot of really good folks out there.
That's true.
And they're hardworking. Again, I kid about profanity. Yeah, there are some places where profanity is part of the basic vocabulary, but it's not with the intention of being hurtful or disrespectful. It's just frankly the way they talk. But the way I get and keep the attention of folks, I talk to folks in groups of 15 to 20 when I'm teaching classes across North America, again, both the US and Canada. And one of the things I say to them, particularly when I'm talking about soft skills in any one of my classes, is, you know, the reason I'm talking about this is not just because I think it's interesting or because I wrote a book about it or any of those kinds of things. I'm talking to you about soft skills, your soft skills, because it's important to your success. The better you are at how you are with the people that you work with and work for is going to be one of the reasons why you succeed. And if you're succeeding as part of a company and everybody else is trying to do the same thing you are, which is to keep the customer in mind, recognize that whether it's construction or technology or the medical profession, whatever industry we're in, we have customers and we serve those customers. So we're in the service business and we need to be able to do it in a way that the customer is not simply satisfied with the product or the service we provide, but they need to be delighted. They need to love us. And the way they love us is because of how we relate to them, how we treat them, how we are with them. And for you folks sitting in my little audience, that means that if you're doing that on the team that you're on for the company you work for, chances are that company's making money. If you're not doing that, that company's going to struggle because nobody wants to do business with someone that can't treat them with respect, with interest, with caring, with good attention, et cetera. Those are all soft skills kinds of considerations, the how you are when you're dealing with people.
I would argue that it's more important in the new normal of working. We've been talking about over-communication on this show, but even more handle with care and servicing each other as just a normal way of working in this pandemic, because we can't see each other really every day.
Yes.
Would you agree?
You can open up a perpetual Zoom window on your computer. Yeah. And Zoom is, to put it in very blunt terms, this is just my opinion, but I've been talking to a lot of folks. Zoom is in an absolute way is here to stay. It is the next addition to the toolkit of communication methods. And what we need to do, and what we're challenged to do, and again, it doesn't vary by industry, because at the end of the day, any business that you're involved in, and I want to focus on the business part, although again, soft skills are so important to personal relationships and life as well. But in the business setting, we've got to use all the tools. And what COVID is really demanding of us is that we, and the term I heard just in a talk the other day, which makes total sense to me, we need to reinvent ourselves. We don't simply need to figure out how do we cope with the fact that we can't have an in-person meeting or we can't do this or we can't do that. We have to think and figure out how to reinvent ourselves to take advantage of all of the different methods that we can use to communicate, and Zoom being a primary one. I'm not branding it per se, it's just that method of communication. So we need to figure that out, because if we don't figure it out, then it's going to have an effect on us being able to maintain the relationships we already had coming into this crisis that we call COVID, and what it will do to those relationships coming out of it. And what we want to do is make sure that we maintain important relationships at work in our lives in general, that we take advantage of the tools that are available, embrace them, just as construction is not the fastest evolving industry either. But as far as the notion of how we communicate with people, because it's fundamental to doing our job, we've got to embrace what's there, take advantage of it, and rebuild, rethink, and reevaluate everything that we're doing so that we continue to provide great service and continue to be successful.
What do you think is the most important soft skill today?
Oh, that's
That's a tough one, isn't it?
what did you say? We have 2 hours for this?
12 hours, yes.
The single most important one.
I have to say the one that emerged at the top of the survey that I did when I wrote my book, which is the quality of being trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you think about that in the business setting, you think about it in public life, again, being worthy of trust is when you say it slowly and you process it, it means so many different things. And in fact, again, in the survey I did when I did my research, it came out as number one. And different people explain what it meant to them to be able to embrace the quality of being trustworthy. And then they went on to use qualities like honesty, integrity, ethics. And you might say, well, aren't those all the same thing? Well, no, they're really articulating in the full, most robust sense what the essence of success is all about. And that is that you are successful because people trust you. You earn their trust over time. They trust you because they know you're honest. They know that you're ethical. They know that you have integrity, which means your words and your actions are the same. If you say you're going to do it, you do it. And that all sums up to that quality of being trustworthy, which everyone should try to achieve as just a fundamental core quality that every person looking at good things about themselves should see that and say, yes, that's very important to me. I want to keep that close to my heart, because if I'm worthy of trust, then I'm going to have success in relationships and in life.
I was going to
say, what soft skill would you say is the most lacking in managers today?
Oh gosh, that's not fair.
Diabolical.
Yeah. I think wow. Notice I'm not just blurting something out, because that's a really good question.
He didn't ask you to name names. He just wanted to know what it is.
I would say that a quality that a lot of managers lack is courage. And it's, I need to say more, don't I?
Well, the courage of having hard conversations that they don't want to have.
Yeah. I thought I was supposed to answer the questions.
Okay.
No, that's pretty much it. It's it's easy, particularly as a leader. It's easy to slap somebody in the back and say, "Hey, good to see you." You have to be careful about slapping these days, but good to see you. I heard great things about you. Blah 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 blah, and then just walk away. It's much more difficult, and again, that's where the courage piece comes in. It's much more difficult to say, "Bob, I need to have a difficult conversation with you," and then you go into and begin that conversation where you're providing feedback to that person with regards to something that they did wrong or very wrong, or the way they behave. Because again, I'll use construction terms, being the best finished carpenter is vitally important to the product of a construction project in beautiful office buildings, beautiful homes, etc. But if the rejoinder but he's really difficult to get along with, then it's not a question of if, it's a question of when that great finished carpenter is going to find himself without a job. Now, it may take an entire career, but while that's happening, what people will be doing is just kind of isolating that person. Bob, you go work on the second floor. Everybody else is going to be on floors 3 through 10, but you just go work on the second floor. And you can't go through life like that. But because of the difficulty in a lot of industries of finding and keeping talent, a lot of times we do things like do everything we have to make sure we can get the product of that person's effort without having the damage of them interacting with other people.
And the other thing too, Dennis, is that when cuts need to be made, guess who's some of the people first in line? People
Absolutely.
like that guy.
Absolutely. And they need to be, because again, at the end of the day, and I believe this firmly, again, from my experience in the construction industry, you can teach the hard skills, the technical skills, the use of equipment, how to make a cut, how to do draw a straight line, how to measure things, all those things. I could go on and on. Those are teachable. And I would argue that the core skills that are involved in conveying your soft skills, your qualities to the people you interact with, those core skills are also teachable, like active listening, like giving and receiving feedback, like how to go about having a difficult conversation. You can teach those things, and if you can teach them, that means you can say, here's how you do it, let me show you, and let's practice it. Now, in construction, people get that when you're talking about a lathe or a hammer or another tool or a technique to do something. But when you talk about, I want you to really focus on how to actively listen. And here are some of the things that are ways to demonstrate you're actively listening. Let's practice them. And they're going to say, "Oh no, come on, I got to get back to the job site." Because again, and this is maybe specific to construction, but I think in general, in the haste of trying to get things done, a lot of people forget the importance of soft skills. But more importantly, they don't value their importance. They don't recognize that at the end of the day, it's the soft skills that are the difference maker for people in getting to know people, getting to know them well, learning to understand them, coming to value and respect them. And those are the people that you know for a lifetime. If we spent more time in industries, and again, I speak to the construction industry, early on in helping the Gen Zs and the Gen Ys that are now coming into the industry learn not simply how to do the job from a hands-on standpoint, but understand that they need to have an ability to first understand themselves, but then also to be able to understand other people when you interact with them. And I'm now just I'm creeping into the body of knowledge around a topic that a lot of people talk about increasingly, and that's emotional intelligence, which is what that in essence is what emotional intelligence is all about. You understand yourself, and you care, and you take an interest in understanding other people, and so you take the sum of all that and have the opportunity for greater success.
We've got about 5 minutes left. I wanted to back up the bus just a second and go back to something you said, where you said it's time now to reinvent yourself. So for our listeners, what is specifically does that entail? What does that look like? What am I supposed to do if I say I'm using Zoom, I'm using Marco Polo, I'm FaceTiming? What beyond that should I be doing?
I think those are simple, straightforward, again, tool, technique, or hard skills considerations in reinventing yourself. The other part, in my view, is when I think about reinvention, I think about those things. And again, for my generation, as Zoom has proliferated, and I use it in all parts of my life, I get the biggest kick out of. There's a social group that I belong to, and I see the same group of people every week. It's church related. I see the same group of people on a Zoom conversation every week. And every week, and now because we've been doing that for 6 months, every week the same 3 or 4 people that are my age or older forget that they have to unmute themselves. And again, I know that seems kind of trite and kind of petty, but the point of that is that's not because they're stupid or because they're senile. It's just that they're not thinking about, I need to learn this. I need to get this. And so they don't worry about it. And I don't want people to, when I say worry about it, I don't mean in a negative sense, but you have to have an interest in figuring out, how have I done things in the past that are basic and essential, particularly again, in the context of my calling or my business. How have I done things in the past? What came to a grinding halt for at least a period of days or weeks at the beginning of this COVID thing, and then as I've started up again, and I've been forced to move into these ways of interacting with people, ways of getting information, ways of solving problems, ways of making decisions. Am I embracing those things? Because part of the reinvention is really not reinvention. It's simply saying that I need to have a mindset. A particular mindset. A terrific author wrote a book on mindset, and she talks in her book that there are 2 kinds of mindsets: open, a growth, and closed. And a growth mindset says, you know what, I can learn something new today. I can learn something new tomorrow. All I got to do is put the effort and energy into it and want to learn it. And that's part of the reinvention, is just the mindset. Saying to myself, I want to continue. I want to grow. I want to find new ways of maintaining relationships, of serving customers, of being a good neighbor, all those kinds of things. And I need to embrace all the tools, learn them, practice them. And on the other side of this, I will be not a different person, but I'll be retooled a bit again, as it relates in particular to the simple thought of everything involves interacting with other people. Everything involves interacting with other people.
There's another phrase that I hear somewhat in construction is measure twice, cut once.
Mm-hmm.
And here at SalesFuel, we measure a person's natural tendency to develop strong soft skills. And of course, if they don't have that natural tendency, that just means they have to work harder at it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's measure once. The measure twice, though, is what metrics do you use to be able to determine then that someone's actually improving their soft skills?
Well, that's a good question. Also, there an area that I've gotten more interested in the last few years. Again, I mentioned this body knowledge around emotional intelligence, and one of many books, but one of the books that I found to be very useful, and I mentioned it as a resource in my book, is entitled Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And the authors of that book include their view of emotional intelligence is it involves two types of competency, and each of those competencies has a couple of skills involved with them. So as soon as you say the word skill, when you say soft skills, people get confused and they think, well, you're talking about people skills, you're talking about communication skills, you're talking about soft and mushy stuff. But when you talk about skills in the context of emotional intelligence, you're talking about a skill like being self-aware, and what that's the competency. How do you do that? How are you socially aware? What do you do in order to be aware of what's going on around you? And so, the second cut, if you will, is built on a foundation of understanding yourself. So that you can manage what's going on with you from an emotional standpoint. We're talking about emotions. But the second part is understanding the other person, which means you're observant, you're interested, you're caring, you listen, you look at them, you get curious when they have an expression on their face like they just got a terrible phone call, all those kinds of things. You take the sum of all that and you use that to manage the relationship. Can you do that? Do you understand something about yourself so that you have the ability to be able to be more effective and get better results? And if you're a salesperson, all that kind of stuff is absolutely essential. Some people's brains are not wired to be as aware of others as they need to be. Can they become more aware? The answer is yes, and that's kind of the tack that this book takes, was it gives in an assessment, it gives a person ideas about tasks, activities, and tools they can use to improve their level of emotional intelligence, and it's measurable. So again, measurement is obviously an important ingredient in any kind of an improvement program. So around this area of emotional intelligence, which is all about soft skills, at the end of the day, there's at least one methodology that says it's measurable. You can do things to improve it, whatever facet of it we're talking about, and the net result is you'll achieve better results.
Well, I think it's aspirational and room for improvement that's never ending, in my opinion, Dennis. And if are you doing speaking, virtual speaking engagements? I was going to send everybody to DennisDuranSpeaking.com, and Dennis D. Duran is your Twitter.
That's correct. Yeah. The answer is it's been quiet. I've done some, but it's been quiet. But obviously, you can tell from talking to me that I don't like talking. So that's been a limiting factor for sure. But anyway.
Well, I hope somebody will listen to this and want to engage with you and reach out to you, Dennis. This has been such a pleasure. I've learned a lot in 20 minutes.
Good. Well, thank you. I appreciate your listening, and I appreciate your questions, and I appreciate the invitation to be here with you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at SalesFuel.com.